casemates, and they now serve as not only a museum, which you can visit just over there, but also as accommodation for some of my Beefeater buddies and their families. Hand up those of you who knew that Beefeaters like me actually lived inside the Tower of London. How many of you didn't know that? How many of you couldn't care less where we live? Fair enough. You can see a second floor of windows over there. Behind those windows used to be the study to Sir Isaac Newton, who was the master of the mint here in the 17th century. Sir Isaac Newton was a very clever man. He came up with the idea of milling the outside of coins to stop people clipping bits off the edges and making their own coins, and that's very clever, isn't it? He also invented gravity, a very fine British invention, invented right here in the Tower of London. Before that, it just used to float about a lot. Some Americans think he invented apples, but he didn't. This is the bell tower, and this is the tower where Sir Thomas More was held for refusing to accept King Henry VIII as the supreme head of the church in England. At the same time, and for the very same reason, his very good friend John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester, was held in the upper chamber. Both men were to suffer terribly for about 15 months, but could not be persuaded to abandon their beliefs. Were finally led out of these chambers, through those gates and up the hill, where they were publicly beheaded as traitors in 1535. Exactly 400 years later, both men were beatified as saints in the Roman Catholic Church. And just as a side note to this story, John Fisher in 1531 had an attempt on his life. His cook tried to poison him. But being a religious man, he fasted on the Friday. Everyone else ate the food and died, but he didn't. The cook was arrested, and they tried him and found him guilty. And there's a good thing around here. We do punishments to fit the crime. What sort of punishment would you do to someone who poisoned you? You'd boil them alive up there on the hill.
Wow. Oh.
It's true. Here, this tower, yeah, this wasn't the only place where they put stage, but another man to come here was a man called James Scott. He was the Duke of Monmouth, and he was the eldest of 17 illegitimate children of King Charles II. After the death of his father in 1685, this incredibly handsome and popular young man was persuaded to stake his claim to the throne, because his uncle, King James II, was an authoritarian Roman Catholic. To press home his claim, he landed in the west country of England and then marched inland, gathering popular Protestant support in what is known as the Monmouth or Pitchfork Rebellion. That rebellion was crushed at the Battle of Sedgemoor on the 6th of July 1685, but James Scott evaded capture by fleeing the battlefield. He hid in towns and villages for a few days, but was caught dressed as a woman near Ringwood and brought here to the Tower. There was no need for a trial, as he was condemned to death in his absence, and 3 days later he was led out of here, through those gates and up the hill. But this time, instead of being pelted with fruit and vegetables like everybody else, all the ladies came and they threw flowers in his path as he walked up in silence. That's how incredibly handsome and popular he was. He looked a bit like me. An inflatable version of William Shatner.